Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story.
Okay, confession time. I watch way too many YouTube videos. Especially the solo camping ones. You know the ones. Just a person, a tent, a crackling fire, and miles of quiet wilderness. They make it look so peaceful, so easy. Like the woods just wrap you up in this big, quiet hug. They chop wood, they cook fancy meals on tiny stoves, they sip coffee watching the sunrise, pure magic. It got into my head. Badly. So, one day, staring at another video of some guy serenely frying eggs beside a mountain lake, I snapped. I can do that, I announced to my empty apartment. How hard can it be? Turns out, harder than it looks on a screen. Much harder. Especially when the wilderness decides to play a different game. First, there was the gear. Oh boy, the gear. Watching those videos, you'd think you just need a tent and a sleeping bag. Lies. Absolute lies. I spent weeks researching and buying stuff. A tent that claimed to be ultralight, but felt like hauling a small elephant. A sleeping bag rated for Arctic explorers. I was going in late summer. A backpack so big I could probably fit inside it. A fancy camp stove, a water filter that looked like a science experiment, a first aid kit big enough for a battlefield, enough freeze-dried meals to survive a nuclear winter, a hatchet, because the YouTubers always had a hatchet, a fancy folding chair, a portable solar charger. The list went on. My credit card whimpered. The place I picked was called Whisper Ridge. Sounded peaceful, right? Looked remote on the map, a designated camping area deep in the Greenstone National Forest, supposedly with good trails and a basic pit toilet. The YouTube videos made remote look appealing. Perfect solitude, they'd murmur. Just you and nature. The drive took forever. Paved roads turned to gravel, gravel turned to rutted dirt tracks that made my little car groan. Trees closed in, tall pines and thick ferns, blocking out more and more sky. The air got cooler, smelling damp and earthy. By the time I bounced into the small, empty parking clearing marked Whisper Ridge trailhead, my nerves were jangling. Excitement, mostly. But a tiny, annoying voice in my head whispered, asterisk, what if the videos lied? Asterisk, I shoved it down. This was adventure. Hoisting the enormous backpack felt like strapping on a boulder. I staggered slightly. Okay, I thought, this is less graceful than the guy in the flannel shirt, following the faded trail markers. The forest swallowed me whole. The sounds of my car faded, replaced by birdsong, the rustle of leaves, and my own labored breathing. It was quiet. Really quiet. Not scary quiet, but big quiet. After about an hour of huffing and puffing, sweating under the ridiculous backpack, I found the campsite clearing. A flat patch of grass near a small, chuckling stream. A simple wooden bench. A sturdy metal box for food storage, bear-proof, it said, good. A path led to the pit toilet, a rustic little shack tucked discreetly away. Setting up the tent was my first YouTube challenge. The guy in the video made it look like unfolding a napkin. Mine involved tangled poles, confusing instructions, muttered curses, and one pole snapping back and nearly taking my eye out. Finally, after much sweating and grumbling, the bright blue dome stood, slightly lopsided, but standing. Victory. Next, fire. Essential for the authentic experience. Gathering wood was harder than expected. Finding dry stuff, breaking it into manageable pieces without the hatchet decapitating me, it took ages. But finally, with a pile of twigs and some dubious fire starter blocks, I coaxed a tiny flame. Blowing on it gently, just like the videos, it grew. Soon, I had a respectable little fire crackling in the stone ring. The smell of wood smoke was incredible. This is it, I thought, grinning like a fool. I'm doing it. I boiled water on my fancy stove, way faster and easier than the fire, for my freeze-dried beef stroganoff. It tasted, well, like salty cardboard with vague meat-like bits. But I ate it sitting on my folding chair, watching the flames dance, feeling ridiculously proud. The forest deepened into dusk. Shadows stretched long and dark between the trees. The birdsong changed to the chirps and clicks of nighttime insects. I felt small, but not scared. Just, present. Darkness fell fast in the woods. It wasn't like city dark, where there's always some glow. This was thick, velvety dark. My headlamp beam cut a narrow tunnel through it. The fire became the center of my world, a small circle of warmth and light pushing back the immense blackness. I sat for a long time, just listening. The fire crackled. The stream gurgled. An owl hooted somewhere far away. It was peaceful, but also strangely loud with all the little night sounds. I felt incredibly alone, but in a good way. Like I'd stepped off the spinning world for a bit. I filmed a short clip on my phone for my imaginary YouTube channel. Whisper Ridge, Night 1. Pure magic. Highly recommend solo camping. I felt like a fraud, but also exhilarated. Sleeping was different. The sleeping bag was too warm, so I unzipped it halfway. Every little sound outside the tent seemed magnified tenfold. A twig snapping. A leaf rustling. My heart would thump for a second before I told myself, it's just the woods. It's fine, the ground was harder than my bed, but I drifted off, lulled by the stream and the utter stillness. Just before dawn, I woke up. Not suddenly, but gradually. The world outside the tent was that deep, cool gray before the sun breaks. Everything was utterly silent. Not a bird, not a bug, not a rustle. The stream seemed muted. It was eerie. Then I heard it. Just one. Like something heavy stepping on dry leaves. Close. Maybe 20 feet from the tent, near the stream. It wasn't a deer. Deer's steps are lighter, quicker. This was slow, deliberate. Crunch. My breath caught. I lay frozen in my sleeping bag, ears straining. Nothing else. Just that one, heavy step, and then the profound silence returned. I waited, heart pounding in my ears. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing happened. The silence gradually filled back in with the first tentative bird calls as the sky lightened. Probably a raccoon, I told myself firmly, though it sounded too big. Or a deer after all. Maybe just the woods settling, the rational explanation one. By the time the sun painted the tops of the trees gold, the fear had faded, replaced by the excitement of a new day. Solo camping. I'd survived the night. The morning was glorious. Crisp air, sunlight dappling through the leaves, steam rising off my instant coffee. I felt amazing. Invincible. That strange sound was forgotten. Today was for doing the things. First, water duty. I took my fancy filter and bottles down to the stream. Kneeling on the bank, scooping the clear, cold water, filtering it into my bottles, it felt incredibly satisfying. Just like the videos, I filmed a bit of the process, narrating quietly to myself about the importance of clean water. Next, fire revival. The YouTubers always built their morning fire from the previous night's coals. I poked at the gray ashes. A few faint orange embers glowed deep within. Carefully, I added tiny twigs, blowing gently. A wisp of smoke, then a tiny flame. Triumph. Soon, I had a merry little fire going again. I cooked oatmeal, slightly burnt, in my little pot right on the coals, feeling like a true woodsman. The afternoon was for exploration. I packed a small bag with water, snacks, and my phone, for photos, not signal, there was none. I followed the trail deeper into the woods. Everything felt vibrant and alive. Moss-covered logs, giant ferns, sunlight filtering through the canopy. I saw squirrels, chipmunks, and even a flash of a shy deer bounding away. I found a small waterfall cascading into a deep, clear pool. Breathtaking. I sat there for ages, just soaking it in. This was it. The connection. The peace. I filmed the waterfall, the trees, even a close-up of a cool beetle. I was living the dream. As I walked back towards camp, the shadows started lengthening. The woods felt different in the late afternoon. Quieter, maybe. Watchful. I shook my head. Imagination. Just tired. I gathered more firewood, stacking a decent pile near the ring. Dinner was another freeze-dried masterpiece, chili mac, eaten as dusk settled in. I felt content, pleasantly tired from the day's hike. The fire was warm and comforting. I rewatched my waterfall video on my phone, smiling. This trip was everything I'd hoped for. Darkness came faster this time, or maybe I just noticed it more. The fire was my beacon. The forest noises seemed louder, more rustles, more snaps in the undergrowth. I told myself it was just the usual nightlife. But that heavy crunch from the pre-dawn kept echoing in my memory. I kept glancing towards the stream, where I'd heard it. I decided to turn in earlier. The day had been full. I brushed my teeth with bottled water, spitting carefully away from camp, secured my food in the bear box, double-checking the latch, and doused the fire completely, pouring water until it hissed and steamed, just like the safety video said. The sudden plunge into near-total darkness was jarring. My headlamp beam felt very small. I crawled into the tent, zipped the door shut, and wriggled into my sleeping bag. The familiar sounds of the night forest wrapped around the thin nylon walls. Crickets, the stream, the occasional distant hoot. I relaxed. *C. All good. Just nature, *. I must have drifted off. I don't know for how long. What woke me wasn't a sound, exactly. It was a presence. A feeling of absolute stillness outside, like everything was holding its breath. The crickets had stopped. Even the stream sounded muffled. My own breathing sounded too loud. Then, a soft shuffling sound. Right outside the tent. Near the door. My eyes snapped open in the pitch black. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Deer. Raccoon. Please be a raccoon, *. Silence. Heavy, waiting silence. Then, a low sound. Not a growl, not a roar. It was, deep. A rumbling vibration, like a giant cat purring, but lower, thicker. It vibrated through the ground, through the floor of the tent. Hoo! Every hair on my body stood straight up. Ice flooded my veins. That was no raccoon. No deer. That was something big. Something way too close. I lay frozen, not daring to breathe. The rumbling sound came again, closer. Who? I could almost feel the warmth of breath on the tent fabric. Bear. Oh God, it has to be a bear, *. Panic seized me, cold and sharp. The food. The bear box. Did I leave something out? A crumb? A wrapper? My mind raced. Play dead. No, that's for grizzlies, not black bears. Make noise. Climb a tree, * useless fragments of information swirled. Then, the tent moved. Not a gust of wind. A solid, deliberate push against the side, near my head. The nylon wall bulged inward slightly. A low, inquisitive woof sounded, right outside. Oh God, oh God, oh God, *. I fumbled frantically for my headlamp, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grasp it. I flicked it on, the beam blinding in the small space, pointing it towards the source of the push. The light shone through the blue nylon. Silhouetted against it, pressed close, was a massive, dark shape. And then, incredibly, slowly, the shape moved. A huge, leathery hand, fingers thick as sausages, pressed flat against the tent fabric right beside my face. It wasn't clawing. It was, feeling. Exploring the strange surface, not a bear, asterisk. My brain short-circuited. The shape, the hand, the sheer size. It filled the space outside the tent wall. The rumbling sound came again, softer this time, almost curious. Hoo. Gorilla, asterisk. The word exploded in my mind, nonsensical, terrifying. Impossible. This wasn't Africa. This was Greenstone National Forest. But the silhouette, the hand, there was no mistaking it. A massive gorilla was outside my tent. Touching it. Pure, primal terror obliterated every rational thought. Survival instinct took over. I didn't think. I moved. With a yell that tore from my throat, a raw sound of pure fear, I scrambled backwards, kicking wildly at my sleeping bag. My hand found the tent zipper at the back, the one opposite the door and the massive shape. I yanked it down, the sound impossibly loud in the stillness. Cold night air rushed in. I didn't look back. I plunged headfirst out of the tent, stumbling into the dark clearing, my headlamp beam jerking wildly across the ground, the trees, the empty bear box. I heard a startled, deep grunt behind me, the sound of the tent fabric rippling violently as the creature reacted. Run, asterisk. I ran. Blindly, desperately, away from the tent, away from the clearing, crashing through bushes, branches whipping my face. I didn't know where the trail was. I just ran towards what I hoped was the direction of the parking lot, guided only by the bobbing circle of my headlamp and sheer panic. Behind me, I heard crashing sounds. Heavy footsteps thudding on the forest floor. Not running, but moving with powerful, ground-shaking strides. Following. It's chasing me. Oh God, it's chasing me, asterisk. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead. Every shadow was a monster, every rustle its approach. I tripped over a root, sprawling face-first into damp leaves and moss. I scrambled up instantly, whimpering, tasting blood on my lip. I glanced back, shining my light wildly. There. Between the trees. A massive, dark shape, moving steadily towards me. Not charging, but closing the distance with terrifying ease. The light caught dark, intelligent eyes reflecting back at me. A broad, powerful chest. Shoulders like boulders. It was huge. Far bigger than I could have imagined. It saw the light and paused for a second, head tilted slightly. It made that low rumbling sound again. Hoo. It didn't sound angry. It sounded, interested. Confused. But all I felt was the crushing weight of its size, its presence. It was an alien force of nature, and I was prey. I screamed again, a wordless cry of terror, and plunged deeper into the woods. The chase was on. The next few hours were a blur of terror, exhaustion, and pure adrenaline. I ran until my legs gave out, then crawled behind the biggest tree I could find, trembling, trying to silence my gasping breaths. I'd hear the heavy footsteps, getting closer, then stopping. Sometimes I'd see the silhouette moving through the trees, outlined by the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. It never charged. It never roared. It just followed. Like it was keeping track of me. Like I was a strange, noisy creature it was curious about. Why? Asterisk, the thought screamed in my head between waves of panic. Asterisk, why is it following? What does it want? Asterisk. I remembered snippets from nature documentaries. Gorillas. Mostly peaceful. Herbivores. But territorial. Protective. And incredibly strong. Unimaginably strong. If it decided I was a threat, I didn't want to think about it. This one was alone. Female, I thought, remembering the silhouette. What was a gorilla doing in Greenstone Forest? Escaped from a zoo? Some crazy private collector? It didn't matter. It was here. And it was fixated on me. I tried hiding. I found a hollow under a fallen log, cramming myself into the damp, earthy space, covering my headlamp. I lay there, shaking, listening. The footsteps approached. Stopped nearby. I could hear sniffing. Deep, wet snuffles. SNNNRRFFF, SNNNRRFFF, right above me. Leaves rustled as it investigated the log. A low, thoughtful grumble vibrated the ground. It knew I was there. It stood there for what felt like an eternity. Then, the footsteps slowly moved away. I didn't dare breathe until they faded completely. I waited minutes, then crawled out, stiff and cold. I needed distance. I needed to get back to the trail. I started moving again, trying to be quiet, but every step seemed loud. I used my headlamp sparingly, terrified of attracting its attention, but equally terrified of tripping and breaking a leg in the dark. I found the stream again, further downstream from the campsite. The water was cold and fast. Maybe it would mask my scent. I waded in, gasping at the icy shock, stumbling over slippery rocks, following the current downstream. It was slow going, exhausting. After 20 minutes, freezing and soaked to the waist, I scrambled up the opposite bank. I collapsed, shivering violently. Thud. Thud, asterisk. It was on the bank I'd just left. Standing there, watching me cross. Moonlight caught its shape clearly now, the powerful arms, the sloping forehead, the dark, watchful eyes. It made a soft hooting sound, almost like a question. Who? It didn't cross the stream. It just stood there, observing. Waiting. I crawled away, teeth chattering, deeper into the unfamiliar territory on the far side of the stream. The night wore on in a cycle of frantic movement, desperate hiding, and paralyzing fear whenever I sensed or saw the massive shadow nearby. It never attacked. It never showed aggression. It followed. It watched. It investigated where I hid. It was a constant, terrifying presence, a dark force hurting me further away from safety, from my tent, from everything familiar. Once, I tried yelling, waving my arms, throwing rocks in its direction, from behind a thick tree trunk. Go away. Leave me alone. My voice was hoarse with fear and exhaustion. The gorilla just tilted its head. It picked up one of the small rocks I'd thrown, examining it curiously with thick fingers. It made that low rumble again, then dropped the rock and took a few unhurried steps closer. My bravado vanished. I ran again. The worst moment came when I was cornered against a steep, rocky slope. I'd been scrambling upwards, hoping to get a vantage point, maybe see the trail. Halfway up, I slipped, skinning my palms. I turned, shining my light down. It was at the base of the slope. Looking up at me. It wasn't climbing. It just stood there. Its eyes reflected the light steadily. It seemed calm. Patient. Like it knew I couldn't go anywhere. I was trapped. Exhausted, cold, bleeding from scratches, utterly defeated. I slumped against the rock, tears of frustration and terror mixing with the sweat and dirt on my face. The headlamp beam trembled on the massive form below. It took a step forward, then another, stopping just a few yards away. It raised a hand, not in threat, but slowly, palm open towards me. A gesture. An offer. It rumbled softly, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my own chest. Hoo. It didn't understand my fear. It didn't see a terrified human. It saw something strange, lost, maybe interesting. It wanted contact. It wanted to know. And that was somehow more terrifying than outright aggression. My mind couldn't process it. All I saw was power and strangeness, and my body screamed danger. I screamed back at it, a raw, ragged sound fueled by every ounce of fear and exhaustion. No. Just go. Please. The sudden loud noise startled it. It flinched back, dropping its hand, and let out a surprised, sharp bark. It took a step back, then another, watching me warily now. My outburst had created distance. I didn't waste it. While it was momentarily uncertain, I scrambled sideways along the rocky ledge, away from its direct line of sight, then half slid, half fell down a less steep section into the dense undergrowth below. I ran, not caring about noise now, just putting distance between me and that terrifyingly curious gaze. The sky was finally, blessedly, beginning to lighten. The oppressive blackness softened to a deep gray. Shapes became clearer. I could see trees, not just looming shadows. Hope, thin and desperate, flickered. I had to find the trail. I had to get back to the car. I was hopelessly lost. The stream was nowhere in sight. The terrain was unfamiliar. But the growing light gave me courage. I moved as fast as my battered body could, scanning for any sign of the path, a worn patch, a marker, anything. I heard the footsteps again. Steadier now. Purposeful. It was still following, navigating the brightening woods with ease. But the light changed things. It was less a phantom, more a real, immense animal. Seeing it clearly in the dim dawn light was almost worse. Its size was staggering. Its dark fur, its powerful shoulders, the quiet intelligence in its eyes as it watched me stumble ahead. It kept pace, maybe 50 yards back, never closing the gap fully, but never letting me out of sight. It's just seeing me out, a hysterical, exhausted part of my brain whispered. Like it's escorting me off its territory, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. Finally, through a break in the trees, I saw it, a flash of gravel. The parking lot clearing. A surge of adrenaline gave me a final burst of energy. I crashed through the last of the undergrowth, bursting out onto the dirt track where my little car sat, blessedly alone. I didn't look back. I fumbled the keys out of my muddy pocket with shaking hands. The footsteps had stopped at the tree line. I could feel eyes on my back. I jammed the key into the lock, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside, slamming it shut and hitting the lock button with a frantic slap. Safe, asterisk. I sat there, gasping, trembling uncontrollably, my forehead pressed against the cool steering wheel. I didn't dare look up yet. I listened. Silence. No heavy footsteps on gravel. After a long minute, I slowly raised my head and looked towards the trees. It was there. Standing just inside the forest edge, half hidden by ferns. Watching me. The rising sun caught the edges of its fur. It looked calm. Almost serene. It tilted its head, observing the strange metal box I'd crawled into. It made that low, soft rumble one last time. Hoo! Then, slowly, deliberately, it turned and melted back into the forest, disappearing among the trees as silently as it had arrived. I sat in the car for a long, long time. Shaking. Crying quietly. Staring at the empty tree line. The sun rose fully, bathing the parking lot in cheerful morning light. Birds sang. It looked peaceful. Beautiful. But all I felt was the crushing weight of the night, the echo of heavy footsteps, and the image of that massive, dark hand pressing against my tent. I looked down at myself, clothes torn and muddy, hands scraped and bloody, face probably a mess. I had nothing. No backpack, no tent, no sleeping bag, no fancy stove, no phone, lost somewhere during the night, no food, no water. Just the keys in my hand and the clothes I'd slept in. My entire solo camping adventure, the gear, the plans, the YouTube dreams, was back there in the woods. Abandoned. Left for the curious gorilla, or the bears, or the weather. I didn't care. Not one bit. With trembling hands, I turned the key. The engine sputtered to life, the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I didn't look back at the trailhead sign for Whisper Ridge. I put the car in gear, spun it around on the gravel, and drove. Faster than was safe on the rutted track. Away from the quiet woods, away from the peaceful stream, away from the terrifyingly gentle giant who just wanted to say hello. I drove until I hit paved road. I drove until I saw a gas station. I pulled in, stumbled out, and bought the biggest bottle of water and the sugariest donuts they had. I sat in my car, cramming food into my mouth, washing it down with gulps of water, staring blankly ahead. The guy behind the counter gave me a strange look. I probably looked like I'd been through a war. I felt like I had. I pulled out my wallet to pay. Tucked inside, behind an old receipt, was a small, crumpled printout. It was a screenshot I'd taken weeks ago. A solo camper, sitting serenely by a fire in a beautiful forest clearing. The caption read, "Find your peace. Find yourself. Go solo." I stared at it. Then, slowly, deliberately, I crumpled it into a tiny ball and dropped it into the trash can by the pump. Peace. I'd found something else entirely. Something wild, something terrifyingly real, something that didn't fit into any 10-minute YouTube video. I'd found the night the woods watched back. And I never, ever wanted to find it again. I started the car and pointed it towards home, towards noise, towards lights, towards a world where the biggest predator was probably the neighbor's yappy dog. My solo camping career was over before it even really began. And honestly, I was perfectly fine with that. The woods could keep their peace. And their gorillas. I was done.